see you guys in the dark.
So when I was a senior in high school, I was out of the blue contacted one day by this random guy on MySpace. I vaguely recognized him, but didn't really know him. He told me that they knew me from school, and I had tortured him in math a couple of times. This should have been my first red flag that something was off. I hate math, and I've never tutored anyone in it. I told him he was mistaken, but I tried to be nice to him, and we struck up a friendly conversation. Soon the guy, Brian, started talking to me at school. It started off pretty innocently. He was giving me more attention than I wanted from him, but I was flattered and didn't think anything of it at the time. He was a couple of years younger than me, and I figured he had developed a crush on me primarily because we were both kind of odd compared to the other kids in our high school. It was a very small school, and he and I were two of the very small number of alternative kids there. He was pretty emo, while I tended to be a bit more towards punk. Both of us loved My Chemical Romance. I figured he was just into me because there weren't many other girls with similar interests. Before long, he started waiting for me at my locker, every day, between every class. He started following me around before school and during lunch. He started coming to my performances. I tried to be polite, but started to avoid him. I would go to the local grocery store to eat lunch, even though it was more expensive, because underclassmen weren't allowed to leave campus. The situation continued to escalate to the point where he was sexually harassing me every chance I failed to avoid him. If he was waiting for me at my locker, he would say explicit things to me, tell me what he wanted to do to me, and tell me that he was having sex with his girlfriend. He wished that it was me, though. At homecoming, he left his girlfriend waiting awkwardly while he came to tell me that he really wanted to have all of us to have a threesome. Luckily, my girlfriends were there with me and came over as soon as they noticed him talking to me, which made him scurry away from us. As quickly as it started, it was over. One day he stopped showing up at school. I was relieved, but curious. After about a month of him being gone, my friend mentioned him in front of my dad. My dad questioned me about what happened, and I ended up telling him the whole story. He seemed really troubled. I asked him what was wrong, and he told me why Brian had been absent from school recently. Apparently, not long after homecoming, Brian had strapped some fireworks to a cat and set them off. The cat exploded, and Brian had laughed. He got caught and sent to kiddie jail and was committed to a psychiatric facility by his parents after he was released. I don't know what happened to him after that. I'm thinking I dodged the bullet, though, because he turned out to be even crazier than I thought he was.
So this all happened throughout my high school experience. I'm currently a junior at my school, and this all started the second semester of my freshman year. The first incidents were close to the end of the freshman year. There were a few my sophomore year, and then there's only been one so far my junior year. And it's all completely true. I tried looking for the police records that go with it, but I couldn't find anything, because of how long it was. The guy in question, I'll call him Alex, is Asian, with really short hair, and something like 5'4". He's in the same grade as my oldest sister. He's also an avid user of cigarettes, alcohol, and the likes. He even bragged to me that he got his license taken away because he went 60 miles an hour above the speed limit on a highway. A damn highway with a limit of 65 miles per hour. That meant he went at 125. So basically, an ill-behaved boy was chasing a really good girl. I'll give you the entire story now, and I hope it makes everyone who reads this a little more careful when making new friends. The second semester of my freshman year, I took an art class in hopes to get an elective credit. I was sitting with some friends talking about the projects we were making, and Alex walks through. I'd never noticed him in class before, which was really strange. I should also put this on a timeline for you, to make this a little easier to follow. It was close to prom season, so early March, and luckily close to the end of the year. He started talking about whatever, and we really hit it off. After a week, I started seeing him popping up around me, in the hallways, outside my classes, and he'd talk to me during passing time. I didn't think much of it, being the stupid, naive child I was. I should also mention that he rode my bus in the afternoon. Alex and I would sit by each other on the bus and talk, which just encouraged further interaction with him. One day, my older sister, who is 2 grades above me, didn't have theater practice after school, so she took the bus home. And when she got on, she saw me next to Alex. Her face had turned white, and she sat down near the front of the bus. I thought it was really strange, so I planned on asking her about it when I got off the bus, but I forgot to. As prom got even closer, Alex kept talking about it with me. My friends and I all assumed he was going to ask me, because not only did he follow me around, but he wouldn't shut up about it, and he was clearly showing signs of interest in me. Unfortunately for him, however, I was in a relationship with someone at the time, and it was a girl. I had absolutely no interest in dating him. If he did ask me, though, I would need to say we'd need to go as friends. Thankfully, Alex told me instead that he'd like me to tell Tanya that if she didn't have a date, that he'd love to bring her. Almost immediately remembering the incident on the bus, I just said, "She's got a date already, but thanks," wanting to protect her. Over the next few days, Alex actually started talking about sexual statistics. Things like average length of someone's manhood, or the average age someone loses their virginity. I got super uncomfortable about this, and told some of the boys in my class that if it got brought up again, I'd go sit with them, and they gladly offered to protect me. This was my first set of red flags. Another instance that set off red flags about Alex was when I got home, and the doorbell rang. I looked out the window and saw Alex there. This wasn't the strangest part, because I got off the bus before Alex did, so he saw where I had lived. I yelled to my mom that someone was here to see me, and I went out on the front porch to go talk to him. He was with his friends, and yelled to them that he was going to catch up with them later, and he wanted to talk to me first. He told me about some mundane stuff, and I was getting bored. So bored, in fact, that I just bluntly decided to ask him if he liked me. I was tired of him always beating around the bush, and I just wanted a stupid answer. Alex kind of froze and danced around the subject, confirming my suspicions. The way he avoided telling me that he liked me was really strange, bragging to me about his drugs and illegal escapades. My dad was also just coming home from work at the time too, so I had an excuse to leave the really uncomfortable situation. When my dad came in the house, he told me about how nice Alex seemed, and I looked over to Tanya, and she looked upset about it, but neither of us said anything. Later on, not on the same day though, I posted a picture on my Instagram, and he commented on it. I still don't know how he got my Instagram to this day. He commented his phone number, telling me to text him, and that my dad was really chill. Along with the demand for me to text him, he continued to almost harass me on the direction of messaging on Instagram, asking to hang out. This was another red flag that set things off for me, making me weary of him, and I decided that I needed to be very careful with him from now on. In early May, he continued to follow me from class to class, but from a further distance. This was absolutely mortifying, but my girlfriend at the time thought it was hilarious. She said that it was funny seeing a strange boy chase a gay that had no chance with him. I laughed with her on the outside, but internally, I was really scared. It was at this time frame that he actually showed up in my window. I should mention that my parents weren't home at this time either. They were out grocery shopping while all my sisters were home alone with me. I was done with all my homework, and I was practicing my makeup skills so I can do the makeup of a few girls that were going to prom. I had my earbuds in and I was listening to my music when I heard some sort of tapping noise. I took them out, listened intently for a moment, then popped them back in. I heard the tapping noise once again and took my earbuds out again, once again listening. This happened a few times until I just kept my earbuds out permanently. I finally heard it again, and found it coming from my window. I quickly wiped off my makeup and grabbed a pocket knife that I kept under my pillow. I opened my curtains and saw Alex just standing there. He was strangely dressed in a 3-piece tuxedo, with a single white rose. He said something, and I couldn't hear him through the glass. I yelled through the glass I was going to come outside and talk to him. As I walked up the stairs to go outside, Tanya came up to me, terrified. She told me not to go outside, and I asked why. She told me that Alex was outside, and that he was dangerous. She revealed to me that he stalked her freshman year, and followed her around the way he did me. We both panicked together, and I heard the garage door open, signaling that our parents were home. We ran to the foyer, telling our dad that Alex was outside, and that he needed to do something about it. He walked over to the side of the house where my window was, and talked to him. I never knew what he said, but it kept Alex away for a while, which was really nice. But things suddenly got a lot worse from there. Alex started talking to me again, but this time it was about sex and drugs, even worse than before, telling me about all the drugs he had with him, and about all the girls he screwed, going into extreme detail. I went to go sit with the other boys in the art class, but it did nothing. He still talked about it, even making one of the hockey players uncomfortable. They did their best to shield me, but it only went so far. This was my final red flag. Before I deleted his number and blocked him on Instagram, I was too uncomfortable to put myself through any more social interactions with him. The worst it had gotten, though, was 2 days before the last day of school. I was getting ready for bed, around 10 p.m. when I heard a knock at my window. I once again grabbed my knife and looked out my window, assuming the worst, but praying for it to be just the bushes outside my window. I saw the very dark outline of a figure, and my heart had dropped. I knew it was Alex, so I closed my curtains and ran upstairs to my parents' bedroom, almost in tears about Alex being at my window. My dad and I both went back down to my window, and no one was there. My dad thought Alex could still be there, just hiding in the bushes outside my window. My dad decided to try to scare him off, and went to turn on the back porch lights and call for my dogs. I didn't get any more knocks at my window for maybe 2 minutes. I heard another knock and told my dad. He just marched straight outside at this point and found him sitting by my window with his hood up. I don't know what happened, but the police were called, and they had to escort him back to his house. It was terrifying, but I was pissed at that point. Why wouldn't he just leave me alone? It doesn't stop there, however. The next day during math class, I sat in a spot that faces the window. With my back to the door, halfway through the hour, one girl in the class shouts out my name, telling me to look behind me. I turn around, as does the rest of the class, and there was Alex, standing intently above me, silent. I got up, ready to punch him in the face, but he ran out the door. I just stood in the doorway of the room and broke into tears. 3 other people comforted me, and my girlfriend told the teacher what was going on. The scariest part, however, was that I never told him my schedule. Later that day, my mom, Tanya, and I went to the police at our school. When the officer said we could do a no-contact agreement, we ruled it out because it would take too long to put into place. With only a few days left in school, later when the officer talked to Alex, asking him what he did, he said it was because neither me nor my sister told him no. It was near the end of the year, and nothing happened with him over the summer. My sophomore year, though, I had another class with him. I immediately told the teacher about everything so that she knew, and everyone in class protected me from him. I had no further incidents from him. The teacher actually cared about me, and is now one of my close friends. My sophomore year was clear of any incidences, and I had pretty much forgotten the existence until recently. I woke up and checked my phone after turning off the alarm. I saw that I had gotten a random Facebook message from someone I didn't know. My Facebook is about as private as it gets, so I didn't know that it was possible to receive messages from people that I wasn't friends with on Facebook. My sophomore year, Alex was supposed to graduate, but he didn't. His name wasn't even said at the ceremony, and wasn't even listed in the program. Tanya and I both laughed about it, but we knew that it meant that he was going to be in our city longer. I looked at it anyways, and it was very sexual messages. It read, "I need to cream you and stretch it out real good, make you squirt and cream all over it." It was annoying, and I get messages like that all the time from bots on Instagram, so I would have ignored it, but because it was on Facebook Messenger, it was really strange. I clicked on the person's name, and their profile came up. I scrolled through their pictures, and I saw a picture that made my heart sink. A picture of Alex. It was Alex's profile, and he had messaged me, and changed the profile's name and location. I only showed it to a few people, but not to my parents yet. I showed it to my current boyfriend, who showed it to his mom, and she told me to tell my parents. The reason we showed it to a teacher was because he'd been around the school grounds within the last few weeks, and she may be able to do something about it. Nothing has happened with Alex since, but if something else happens, there is a chance he won't make it out of the situation alive. Because I'm fed up with him, and he's caused me and my family enough grief. Please be careful who you choose to make friends with, and what sort of information you give out. Don't put yourself through what I've been through. Let's not meet again, you creepy fucker.
Back in 2007, I started a tech job with an IP phone void DP1 long-distance company. The company is no longer around, and honestly, I don't know how they stayed in business as long as they did. It was really a pyramid scam, but thankfully, I was on the IT side of things, so I didn't have to sell anything. It was a small, typical tech support call center. The customers would call into Verizon, QQuest, etc., would call in and say DT1 lines were down, or outages were there. I was the only female on my team, having to prove myself and show that I'd do anything male counterparts could do. It didn't take long, and the customers respected me for being able to handle things. After making my mark, I decided to take the 10-hour night shifts. I worked Wednesday through Saturday from 1 p.m. to 12 a.m., and after 6 p.m., I was completely alone in the whole building. The rush to get out of the office by 6 p.m. was insane. I wouldn't blame them, though, but I decided having 3 days off was better than 2. Like I said, I was by myself for most of the night. I would have to keep an eye on emails and make sure I answered calls. It was a very slow shift indeed. I would get a lot of video game, reading, or schoolwork done during this time. But sometimes, I would just wander the building, walk around just to get away from my desk for a time. I would have the VoIP phone system connected to my cell phone so no calls would be missed. This allowed me to get to a soda, go get food, and so on. One time while I was up away from my desk, I was going down to the lunchroom to grab a soda. The vending machine was on the basement floor. The basement had a wall of windows and one set of security doors. Same for the main entrance. Only there was one camera facing that door. Nothing else really made me feel very safe. I didn't like going to the basement much because the back of the building faced an arch of dark woods. There was a walking path to the woods, but for some reason, they didn't install lights for the walking path. Never really sure why that was, but it didn't help the creepy factor. Sometimes I would see animals run past, but other times, I felt like someone was just watching me. I always try to make it fast when getting a soda or a snack, but sometimes it didn't feel fast enough. So one night, I was making my way down to the basement of the building to get a soda. It was a slow, dragging night, and needed a little caffeine for a pick-me-up. I counted my money as I walked to make sure that I had enough to get in and out quick. But out of the corner of my eye, I saw something dart from the glass door back into the darkness. I stopped dead in my tracks and tried to scan the forest, but like I said, it was just blackness. I felt a bit of unease, and everything told me to turn on my heels and go back to my desk. But it was like 9 p.m., and I had a fair bit of time left on my shift before I could blow this pop stand. I tried shaking the feeling off and briskly walked over to the soda machine and made my selection. The soda dropped, and as I bent down to get it, I heard a loud ping noise. It was as if someone had hit the glass with something. I stood straight up and felt the hair on the back of my neck stand up. I slowly turned around and was scared to see someone out there. But as I made the full turn, I saw once again nothing but darkness. I thought this was a good time to book it back up to the main floor. I didn't bother with the elevator. I went to the stairs and just ran up them. My heart was already racing from having to go down there in the first place, and then the loud bang, and now running up 2 flights of stairs. Once I was back at my desk, I sunk down in my chair and tried to calm down. It was just one noise. I was in a building with locked doors and locked inner offices. I kept saying over and over in my head it was just nothing. I was relieved by that, but out of nowhere, I got that feeling of someone watching me again. I peeked up over my cubicle wall and looked around my office. Nothing seemed out of place until I turned to face the front of the building. Outside the first set of doors was a slender, tall, dark male. He was cupping his hands around his eyes to try and see past the reflection of the lights inside. I dropped back down in my cubicle before he caught sight of me. He didn't look like anyone I'd ever seen in the office, and it was a little past 9 p.m. There was no reason why he is checking out my office. As I sit in my chair, I hear the doors shake. I slowly stood up and watched him pull at the handles of the door. They didn't budge, to my relief. But as I watched him, he turned to face me. His face looked bruised or dirty. I couldn't tell which one. Once his eyes locked onto me, he started to bang harder and smacked the glass. I was so scared. It was in the middle of the night. I was by myself and out in the middle of this office building complex. I grabbed my headset and dialed 911. While getting the operator on the line, the guy was walking back and forth from one side of the glass to the next. The 911 asked me what the emergency was. I told them where I worked and what my name was. I needed someone to come out immediately. Told them that there was a guy trying to break into my office building. While speaking with her, the guy disappeared from my view. I tried to look in all directions, but I just didn't see him anymore. I knew he wouldn't just walk off, not with how hard he was trying to bang on the doors. And out of nowhere, a good-sized rock came out of nowhere and smashed into the door. I screamed and went under my desk. The operator asked what happened, and I explained that a rock smashed against the glass window. She asked me if the glass was broken enough to let him in. I didn't want to stand up and look, but she told me to look in order to know where he was now. I crawled out from under my desk and just peeked over my wall and saw a huge crack down the first part of the door. I sank back down and told her to please have an officer hurry. She said they were on their way. I have read many of these stories on sub-articles, and people say that the cops wouldn't get there fast enough. They just weren't kidding. It feels like time is standing still, and you can do absolutely nothing about it. Another smash against the door, but along with that glass-breaking sound, sirens could be heard coming towards my building. It was definitely music to my ears. I told the operator that the police had arrived, and thanked her for all her support. I stood backed up and looked over the cubicle wall, and the red and blue lights were flashing wildly. But the thing I didn't see was the man. The top part of the door was completely smashed, and the rock was lying on the outside of the entryway. The officer came to the front door, and others were out combing the area. I could see their flashlights moving all around the parking lot. The first officer to come in the building and greet me was a very kind man. He was patient with me and let me explain what I saw happen. Soon, my boss arrived and checked on me, then the damage. At some point, my husband was called and told I could be escorted home by one of the officers. I took a few days off and started to look for another job that wasn't by myself at night. When I gave my statement, I explained to the officer that the person could be partnered with my ex-coworkers who was fired a few weeks prior for stealing and just not showing up. He knew when people came and went. He knew where we kept the cell phones we were selling, not under lock and key, but under a desk of a provisioner, from smartphones to Blackberries, plus VoIP boxes and phone cards. I went on to leave this job a month later and started at a credit card machine company. It was an office full of people, still a call center, but I felt a lot safer there, especially with the security and cameras all over the building. Like I said before, this company is no longer around. It was bought up by another company, and they basically liquidated all the funds that were worth something. So dirty man who tried to break into my office, let's never meet again. It was the fall of 2017, and I was 15 in New York. I was a competitive athlete in high school, the type who got up before school for workouts and trained for long hours after. With recruiting season a year away, I was under tremendous pressure to perform in my sport, as well as in the classroom. I was struggling to keep up with calculus at the time, so my mom suggested I get a tutor. She made an appointment with a teacher friend of hers who really knew his stuff. I'd been going to him regularly, probably 3 times a week for a month. Before I met Alex had a tutoring session right after mine, and we'd cross paths every week. It had never been more than a glance and a smile, as I was incredibly shy and terrified of boys. He was tall and blonde with piercing blue eyes, so naturally I thought he was cute. One day, my tutor had to change his schedule and decided to book us together, as we were learning the same topics in calculus. I was shocked and delighted when Alex started chatting with me afterwards and asked me for my phone number. I had never had a boy pay attention to me in that way, and I was flattered that someone that cute wanted my number. Eventually, Alex and I began dating. Alex went to Catholic school in another town, but because he lived in the same town as I did, he took the bus every morning from my school to his. This gave us most mornings together, and he was able to meet my friends. I was taken a little back when they didn't take to him like I did. They mentioned him being weird, and I got super defensive, but I let it go. I realized that I'd been spending less time with them than I normally did, and assumed that they were jealous that I had a boyfriend. As time went on, things got more serious. We started experimenting sexually, and eventually I lost my virginity to him back in my Ford Escape. That's when things began to change. While Alex and I always talked regularly, he started getting over the top about staying in contact with me. He would make me stay on the phone with him all hours of the night, until eventually my mom started taking my phone before I went to sleep. This relationship also started taking a toll on my athletic career. I was too tired to spend my extra time training and started skipping my practices just to see him, driving 30 minutes each way to his school. Eventually my friends sat me down and told me how unhealthy this relationship has become. I had isolated myself from them, and my entire free time was spent with him. At this point, I wanted so badly to end the relationship. I had fallen out of love with Alex, and college applications were approaching. I had been scouted by no less than 10 colleges, and my plan was to attend Brown. My dream school, of course. Alex's obsession with our relationship had taken a huge toll on his grades, and Brown wasn't going to be an option for him. I remember that I told him that was where I was planning on going, and he freaked out on me, saying he would never get in there, and begging me not to go. At the time, I was also recruited by the University of Illinois. Alex applied there, in hopes that I would ditch Brown and go to Illinois with him. That was the final straw for me. I ended things for good with Alex, assuming that would be it. Because Alex would take the bus from school every morning, I still had to see him. I remember walking into school past him and his classmates who took the bus with him, and some of his guy friends yelled out "slut" and "whore" at me. Apparently it spread a rumor that I had cheated on him with a bunch of guys, and then ended it with him. I ignored it, until I started getting Facebook messages from random people at his school. I spent months getting nasty messages from guys from his school, accusing me of having STDs, and telling me I was going to get gangbanged at by his friends. Eventually I had to delete my Facebook because it wouldn't stop. I think deleting my Facebook was what set off the stalker tendencies for Alex. He wasn't able to see my face online, so I started calling nonstop and sending desperate AIM messages telling me he loved me. While this was going on, I was the favorite to win the high school championship in my sport. I'd gone undefeated all season. Alex ended up showing up while I competed for the championship, and I saw him there. It shook me so badly, I ended up losing the title. I was furious and heartbroken. I ended up picking up his call that came that night and screamed at him, telling him never to contact me ever again. That's when the threats began. I got a call a few nights later from Alex. After he texted me, he had something important to tell me. Stupidly, I answered him. He began to tell me how he was going to hurt me, how he was going to show up at my house when my parents were at work with a rope and a knife and make sure I suffer like I'd done to him. I started to cry, and he eventually went on to say he was going to get me before I went into school, because he knew exactly where I parked every morning, and my parents were never going to find me again. At this point, I had decided to record what was being said, and had it taped on my phone. I hung up once I felt he'd said enough. The next morning, I went into school extra early, much earlier than I figured he'd be there. I showed my advisor the recording, who then called my mom. I remember feeling a deep-rooted shame as my mom listened to the recording, like I had done something to bring this on myself. My advisor was so alarmed by the recording, he advised me to go to the police. This day still feels surreal to me. My mom and I sat in the police station all day, explaining the story of my relationship with Alex and how it got to this point. The police then drove to his high school and arrested him while he was in class. The topper on the day, though, was when I went out to bring food back to the police station for my mom and I pulled into the station at the same time as the car holding Alex did. I saw him in cuffs, and he indeed looked like he wanted to end me. I got a restraining order against Alex, and he was sent to a mental institution for a short while. He ended up breaking the RO on more than one occasion. I contacted the police, but they didn't think it was just cause to do anything. I think it's important to note that Alex's family was wealthy and had a name in the area, so it wouldn't have surprised me if that's why they brushed it under the rug. I ended up attending Brown and had to inform them of the RO and let them know that Alex should not be allowed on campus. It's been over 10 years since this happened, and I still continue to receive phone calls and friend requests from him on occasions. I recently moved across the country from where this occurred. I finally feel safe now that I am far from where I used to live. But anytime I get a blocked call or text message from a number I do not know, a thought crosses my mind that it may be him. It's safe to say that this experience has completely changed who I let into my life and who I choose to date. Alex, let's not meet ever again. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos, and become a stalker of the night, and I'll see you next time.